Florida man enters the presidency, or the race for the presidency rather, over 40 points behind. So we'll be talking about what this means. I will be going over some of my personal opinions on Ron DeSantis and what I believe that he stands for and what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are. But we will be talking about that and what we do there and what happens with that. In other news, with the debt ceiling looming, the House GOP tells lawmakers that they can go home and not worry about anything. So it appears that they're going to, and we'll be talking about some of the leftovers of the debt ceiling from yesterday, along with some of the current news coming out from today. E. Jean Carroll seeks $10 million in new damages against Trump after CNN town hall, and sadly enough, she's probably going to get it, but we'll talk about that and what that means and where we go from there. And bowing to pressure, this is a story left over from Monday. Biden relents on allowing F-16s and fighter jets into the Ukraine, and Russia says this means NATO involvement. So we'll be talking about that and this escalation that went almost completely missed this week. It is going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. Ladies, drink free. My name is Jay Edgar, and this is your evening news. We've got a lot to go over here today. We'll talk actually a little bit about Tina Turner. We'll be talking about Ron DeSantis, which under normal circumstances would actually take up the majority and the brunt of what we're doing here. And I might get fact-checked live here because, he's doing his Twitter space, but our friends over at the Daily Wire, The Blaze, say that it's official. He's going to come back out and do it. Technically, he's not in until he goes and does the Twitter space, which makes absolutely no sense to me because, he announced that he's going to announce, so where does that leave him here? But we'll be talking about that. I am not a fan of Ron DeSantis. I have never been a fan of Ron DeSantis. I call him a governor executive order for a reason, and we will be talking just a bit about what it means for him to be running for the presidency, what it is that he could do, where he could win, and where he is most likely to lose. So we'll go over some of that, plus the debt ceiling talks, and E. Jean Carroll, MSDNC, telling us that the rant on the town hall, which was completely meaningless, by the way, is a reason for her to run back out and get the biggest protective order that she can find. So we'll be talking about that. Before we get started, well, we know what we're going to do before we get started, but before we do get started, I apologize if I'm a little bit low energy tonight because I did that weird thing last night, and I get up at 5 for work, but I did this weird thing that I do occasionally last night where I went to bed at a very, very good and decent hour, like in bed at 11. And was actually falling asleep by at least 11:10, 11:15. So I clicked off the YouTube video I was watching on my TV in my bed, and a funny thing was I woke back up. Like as soon as I hit the stop button, I woke completely back up, and I was pretty much on and off staring at the ceiling until about 3 o'clock this morning. So I'm running right now on 2 hours of sleep on a very, very hectic day, and I've got a belly full of processed sugars here because even though I'm typically keto during the week, one of the advantages of doing it that way during the week is that I can, like if I do run into an emergency like last night, I can kind of manipulate the blood sugar in my body and give myself a burst of energy throughout the day since I don't normally have anything carb heavy or processed sugar. So that's been keeping me going here today, along with a nice bottle of something that they're not actually paying me to say the name of, but it is dark. It's kind of cherry flavored, and that's all you're going to know about it. And you can see the shape of the bottle, but again, since they're not paying me, the name of the soft drink is not going to go up onto the screen. So I got a little bit of that going with us here. And with that, we're going to get down into the news before we get started. Make sure you guys go check out great programming, such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, tweets by Britt, who I do need to coordinate with, by the way, and make sure that we can go and get set up for her first appearance on Contemporary. This will be the second guest appearance on Contemporary, because Stephen Ignoramus sat in on a Christmas episode with me. Was one of the first years that I did Contemporary. He sat in, we did some music, we read some news, said some prayers, did some Christmas carols. So this will be the second time we've actually had a guest on Contemporary. One of the hard parts about doing that is I usually don't know what we're going to talk about until probably about 5 minutes before I hit the go live button, and I don't have it organized or anything else like that. So, and I mean, this is just me riffing on this. A lot of the times when you guys see the articles, it's me reading it for the first time too, but I also know that Britt is very, very good at keeping up with that and keeping up on no prep. She can come back and do that and is usually up on the news, so she would be a fantastic first guest for this, but go check her out on Twitter. Also go check out, if you're more into the audio platform, the No Gimmicks podcast, gaming news, and regular news as well. You can go check out Mr. Behavior or Silentcast over on the Twitch side, and if you want some of your news from a more light-hearted position, go check out Clown World Chronicles on Rumble and BitChute as well. And stop getting your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your house. Get your news from people who are just like you. That's right. These people have made the same decisions that you have, and the people that we normally get our CNN news from wear suits that cost more than our houses. Let's get down into the main news of the day, and let's get started. We are going to start, as we always do, with the finance. Oh, that's me. Haha, look at me. All right. Double me. Let's get the live chat up here, too, so I can see what you guys are doing over here. A couple of people watching over on the Rumble side. A few people already chatting over on the Twitch side. Mogwai is over here. DeSantis announced that he's running, and Tina Turner kicks the bucket with a cat emote. He announced he's going to announce that he might announce an announcement. Yes, that's pretty much the DeSantis thing. Is Brian Kilmeade safe to get news from? I don't 100% know who that is. I have heard that name. I know the name Brian Kilmeade. I just don't know who he is. I think he's a CNN commentator, but I mean, I always say go to the source material, but remember, these people hate you. So do keep that in mind. Take it with a grain of salt. Or you can laugh and play along with somebody who is living in a crappy apartment and trying to buy his first house, but who's had to make some of the same decisions that you have. All right, let's look into the Dow, which took a tumble again today. The Dow is down another 255.59 points, fueled mostly on the uncertainty of the debt ceiling. 32,799.92 is the Dow Jones Industrial Average on the day. That's down 0.75%. We'll be talking just a little bit why in the CNBC article. That's going to be coming up in a moment here. The Bitcoin also took a tumble throughout the day today, although in a little bit more stepped fashion than the Dow did. The Dow tumbled at about 2 o'clock this morning, stayed steady through the rest of the morning. At about 11 o'clock this morning, took another dive again, and steadied itself out with a small little spike at the very end of trading for the day to end itself at $26,341 US dollars and 60 US cents. That is down $868 US dollars and 30 US cents, or 3% down on your Bitcoin for the day. Looking at gas prices a couple days before we get to the Memorial Day weekend, and I was wrong again. We had a decline on the gas yesterday, and we've had another spike in the Madison area. 360 is the running average across all the quick trips, the speedways, and everywhere else. So I hope that you guys were able to top off before the Memorial Day weekend, because it's about to get a little bit tighter in your wallets. I would not be surprised on Friday to see a $4 gas price coming out of this. All right, let's see what our markets are doing from CNBC. Dow drops for a fourth straight day on U.S. default worries as debt ceiling talks stumble, from Samantha Subin and Hak-Yoon Kim. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell for a fourth straight day as U.S. lawmakers struggled to reach a deal on the country's debt ceiling, heightening worries of a potential default. The Dow dropped 255.59 points, or 0.75%, to close at 32,799.92. The S&P lost 0.73 to end at 41,1524, while the Nasdaq edged 0.61% lower to settle at 12,484.16. House Speaker McCarthy said in a late morning press conference that negotiators remain at odds on spending caps and blamed the Democrats for coming to the table so late in the process. McCarthy also said that he believes the negotiating teams could make progress on Wednesday. I just think it's common sense. It's reasonable, it's rational that we spend less next year than we spend this year. Every household would do this, he said. Janet Yellen previously warned lawmakers that a potential default in early June is highly likely. She noted Wednesday that she already sees some stress in the financial markets as concerns mount that the U.S. could see its first default in history, even though it already did that in 1889. The market remains in pullback mode due to a combination of overbought conditions and elevated fears of an unfavorable debt ceiling outcome as June 1st draws closer, said Adam Sarhan, CEO of 50 Park Investments. When fear takes over, investors tend to sell first and ask questions second, and that's what we could be seeing, he said. Stocks hover near lows, even as minutes released from the Federal Reserve's latest meetings signaled more uncertainty as to whether the central bank should hike again in June. Just a reminder that every time that they don't, it comes back and bites them in the ass. So that is where we are at on the markets. Let's look at our layoffs report, and then we will be talking Tina Turner. Aren't you excited for that? From Reuters on the layoffs report today, Facebook owner Meta slashes business teams in final round of layoffs. From Katie Paul, Meta Platforms Incorporated, owner of Facebook, slashed jobs across the business and operations units on Wednesday as it carried out its last batch of a 3-part round of layoffs, part of the plan announced in March to eliminate 10,000 roles. Dozens of employees working in teams such as marketing, site security, enterprise, engineering, program management, content strategy, and corporate communications took to LinkedIn to announce that they were laid off. The social media giant also cut employees from its units focused on privacy and integrity, according to the LinkedIn posts. Meta earlier this year became the first big tech company to announce a second round of mass layoffs. After showing more than 11,000 employees the door in the fall, the cuts brought the company's headcount down to where it stood as of about mid-2021, following a hiring spree that doubled its workforce since 2020. The company's shares closed marginally up in a broadly weaker market. They have more than doubled in value this year and are among the top performers in the S&P 500 index thanks to the cost-cutting drive and Meta's focus on artificial intelligence. Mark Zuckerberg in March said the bulk of the layoffs in the company's second round would take place in 3 moments. Over several months, largely finishing in May, some smaller rounds could continue after that, he said. So, I guess, again, and I've been saying this for a while, that tech really wasn't the boom that they thought it was going to be. I guess you could learn to do that thing that you can't say on YouTube, but I guess it just doesn't work. As a long-term thing after all. Maybe you should learn how to stamp steel in a factory. Who knows? That's your finance for the day. We got to start off our program with some F's in the chat. Unfortunately. Something we kind of saw coming as soon as Disclose.tv broke the news. There are some people who are completely in denial about this, in spite of the fact that this woman was 83 years old. This is not like she just was some young pop star that was very, very popular and just suddenly died. This is a woman who lived a very long and healthy life. And I think people should be celebrating more than just coming out and saying, "No, we can't have this." Tina Turner, a resilient singer, hailed as the Queen of Rock and Roll, dies at 83 years old. From Lisa Respers, France, and Brandon Griggs. Tina Turner, the dynamic rock and soul singer who rose from humble beginnings and overcame a notoriously abusive marriage. Hit me again, Ike! I remember that line from Liar Liar. In 1997, I had absolutely no idea what it meant. I do now. To become one of the most popular female artists of all time, has died. Her family announced in a statement she was 83. Turner died Wednesday at her home in Küsnacht near Zurich, Switzerland, which I had no idea that she was living in Switzerland. I don't think anybody knew she was living in Switzerland. There are a few people that didn't actually know that she was still with us. I'm one of those people. I thought she died a few years ago. Honestly. With her, the world loses a music legend and a role model, her family said. With her music and her boundless passion for life, she enchanted millions of fans around the world and inspired the stars of tomorrow. Today, we say goodbye to a dear friend who leaves us all. Her greatest work, her music, all our heartfelt compassion goes out to her family. Tina, we will miss you dearly. A statement on her verified Facebook page read. A riveting live performer, Turner had a string of R&B hits in the early 60s and 70s with her domineering and violent husband, Ike Turner, before she left him, fleeing their Dallas hotel room with 36 cents. Her solo career floundered for years before she mounted a stunning comeback in 1984 with her multi-platinum album, Private Dancer, and its #1 hit, What's Love Got to Do With It? Before long, Turner was a global superstar, commanding MTV with her spiky wigs, short skirts, and famously long legs strutting across concert stages in 3-inch heels. Her talent earned her the acclaim, the Queen of Rock and Roll, while her resiliency made her a hero to battered women everywhere. When she sang of pain and heartache in her husky, full-throated voice, every word rang true. For a long time, I felt like I was stuck with no way out of the unhealthy situation I was in, she told Harvard Business Review in 2021. But then, I had a series of encounters with different people who encouraged me, and once again I could see myself clearly. I began to change, opening the way to confidence and courage. It took a few years, but finally I was able to stand up for my life and start anew. And her name wasn't even Tina Turner, by the way. She was born Anna Mae Bullock in 1939 to poor sharecroppers near Nutbush, Tennessee, a rural community north of Memphis that she later made famous in her autobiographical song Nutbush City Limits. She spent her early years living with her grandmother after her parents split. We weren't in poverty, we had food on the table, we just didn't have fancy things like bicycles, Turner said in a 2005 interview with Oprah. We were church people, so on Easter we got all done up. I was very innocent and I didn't know much else. I knew the radio, B.B. King, country and western, Turner said, based. I like B.B. King. That's about it. I didn't know anything about being a star until the white people allowed us to come down and watch their television once a week. Following the death of their grandmother in the 50s, Turner and her sister Ruby moved to St. Louis to live with their mother. It was in St. Louis that she began to visit some of the local clubs and met musician Ike Turner, whose band, King of Rhythm, were popular in the area. He recruited her at age 17 to join his band as a singer. Ike had come to the house to ask Ma if it was okay for me to sing with him. He knew I had the potential to be a star, but we were close, like brother and sister, Turner told Winfrey. On his off nights, we'd drive around town, and he would tell me about his life, his dreams. He told me that when he was young, people found him unattractive. That really hurt him. I felt bad for him. I'll never hurt you, Ike. I meant it. I was so nice. He was so nice to me then, but I didn't see the other side of him. She began performing as Tina Turner, and in 1960, they formed the Ike and Tina Turner Revue. Their relationship evolved, and soon their son Ronnie was born the same year. They married in 1962 and raised 4 children. including 2 from Ike's previous relationships and Tina's son Craig, also from a previous relationship. So, and this does go on to talk about the abuse off of this, but yeah, this is probably one of the more iconic voices out there, especially, again, after she left Ike and went out on her own, when she actually started to gain real national attention. Like, this is, especially at 83 years old, this is somebody who had popularity and enjoyed popularity in the 60s and 70s, but didn't really take off until the 80s. So, somebody that we all recognize, somebody whose voice we all recognize. Multi-Grammy winner. And from what I understand, all-around philanthropist too. So, the world has lost a truly great one. We bid you farewell, Tina Turner. She's making music in heaven now. All right. Now we get into the political news, starting with the Daily Wire today. Ron DeSantis, Florida man, officially enters 2024 presidential race from Ryan Saavedra. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has officially entered the 2024 presidential race. DeSantis filed the necessary paperwork with the Federal Election Commission on Wednesday afternoon ahead of his highly anticipated special live stream event on Twitter with the platform's owner Elon Musk, which, by the way, while I was setting up articles, I was trying to listen to, but I don't know if, because they were talking about the fact that it crashed, we'll be reading that from the Washington Post later on here, but I know Spaces completely crashed for a little while. Completely. And when I did join the space, all I got was silence. And I know it wasn't my headphones because I was still hearing the music coming out of the YouTube stream, which we're currently listening to in the background here. With his entrance into the race, many political pundits and analysts now view the Republican Party as a two-horse race between DeSantis and Trump, both of whom are polling significantly higher than the rest of the field. What will be nice about DeSantis getting in is I think that this completely blocks Christie. I don't think he's even going to try at this point. Thank God for that. I'm not a fan of Ron DeSantis, but if there's one human being who's worse than Ron DeSantis, it's Chris Christie. The 44-year-old governor was born in Jacksonville, but was raised on the other side of the state in Dunedin. DeSantis excelled in academics and athletics growing up, eventually playing baseball at Yale, and later obtaining his law degree with honors from Harvard Law. After law school, DeSantis joined the Navy, and he sailed the 7 seas. He also put his mind at ease as a JAG officer and was deployed to Iraq as an advisor to the U.S. Navy SEALs in Fallujah and Ramadi. DeSantis' campaign is expected to be largely centered around the enormous achievements that he has secured as the governor for the state of Florida, dubbed the Florida Blueprint, on how he can transfer those successes to the national level as the President of the United States. That's part of the problem, is he can't. And realistically, this is where some of the problem comes with this, and some of the polarized nature of our country. I will begrudgingly give respect to Ron DeSantis for the fact that he has had a major amount of success among the voters of Florida. Some of it is manufactured. Some of it's manufactured to make you forget about the fact that he was one of the most draconian on COVID. I lived on the border of deep, deep blue Illinois for, well, most of my adult life, actually. I was kind of further away from it for a little while after I left Kenosha, but it was always like right there. And then when I was living down close to Janesville, it was constantly right there again. Of course, being in Kenosha, I was living just a couple blocks away from the Metro train, so I mean, you're practically in Illinois at that point. Not quite, but practically. But of all the times that I went into Illinois during the Commie Coup, I never once got stopped on the interstate, on a back road, or anywhere else to get swabbed before entry of the state. Technically, I never did in Florida either, but I at least saw the facility that they were in the process of tearing down while I went screaming past there at 95 miles an hour, down 95. With a guitar player in my passenger seat, making a live stream talking about us being Florida men. The problem with all of this, though, is the fact that, most of the people in this country, well, maybe not most of the people, but a large plurality of the people in this country, I will say, doesn't view what's happened in Florida as a success. They're coming right out and saying that this is Weimar 2.0, which, it is, but not for the reasons that they think it is. The governor's rise to the top of the Republican Party was cemented. He's not at the top of the Republican Party. He's 40 points behind Trump. What part of this is the top of the Republican Party? I don't even like Trump, and I can recognize that he's 40 points ahead of DeSantis. The governor's rise to the top of the Republican Party was cemented by his handling of the Pinko-Pox pandemic, which included bucking St. Anthony of Fauci, the patron saint of medicine, the public health official whom the previous admin repeatedly took advice from throughout the course of the pandemic and resisting draconian measures that impeded. You're going to play this game, aren't you? Jeez. I understand, by the way, that Benny Boy is all in for Ron. For Governor Executive Order. Because Governor Executive Order is probably going to do a lot for Israel. No, I tried to listen to that Twitter Space Circus earlier. I couldn't get into it. When I had my headphones on and listening, all I got was silence. As a result, the state led the country in migration over the last couple of years, due to the governor's overwhelming popularity in the state, which was made clear last year with his 19-point blowout victory during his re-election. The state's legislature largely does what he says in implementing his agenda. Well, they know that if they don't, he's going to turn around and just and run around him with an executive order. So it's kind of useless to stand in his way at this point. Some of the key legislative victories that he secured this year alone include protecting Florida's children from permanent mutilating surgical procedures, gender identity politics in schools, protecting them from attending sexually explicit adult performances, and protecting them from woke pronoun usage in schools, which means he has lost Massachusetts, New York, Illinois, Virginia, California, which he wasn't ever going to have anyway, and New Mexico right there. Prohibiting institutions from spending federal or state dollars on discriminatory initiatives, such as so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and banning political loyalty tests, which means he's lost the big business bid. Combating human trafficking by strengthening the criminal penalties against traffickers and creating civil actions that victims can take to recover damages and attorney's fees from adult entertainment establishments. I can already tell you why some of the elites and rich and powerful are going to stand against him, sending more than 1,100 assists to help secure the U.S. southern border from the illegal immigration crisis caused by President Biden's policies. Law is still murky and clear whether or not he can actually officially do that, by the way, or if these people can be deputized in the states that they're in. Banning federally adopted central bank digital currency by excluding it from the definition of money within Florida's Uniform Commercial Code, and banning foreign-issued CBDC to protect consumers against the globalist effort to adopt a worldwide digital currency, which I am actually in favor of because I think that your digital currency should be completely decentralized, a la Bitcoin, Shiba Inu, and Doge. Protecting Floridians from medical mandates and prohibiting dangerous gain-of-function research. Signing the strongest anti-illegal immigration legislation in the country into law. Cracking down on CCP influence in the state, which is going to make all your goods at Walmart more expensive by banning their ability to purchase agriculture and land near military bases and critical infrastructure, protecting digital data from Chinese spies, and stopping their influence on the education system. Protecting Floridians from the corporatist environment, social and corporate governance movement, a worldwide effort to inject woke political ideology across the financial sector, placing politics above the fiduciary duty to make the best financial decisions for beneficiaries. Of course, injecting politics into the way that people do business in Florida, just not in the way that the left likes. See, it's part of the problem, and I mean, as we go down through this list, and it keeps going and going like this. Of the 113 Republicans in the Florida legislature, 99 of them endorsed DeSantis for president last week, while only one, State Senator Joe Gruters, endorsed the former president. Part of the issue that is going to come out of this, now, what we had heard about going into the Trump agenda going into 2016 was the fact that he was going to chain all women to stoves, expel all black people to Africa, expel all Hispanic people to Mexico, no matter what their country of origin was, and make this into a white supremacist nation. In fact, I can't think of that lady's name. Not Loomer, the other one. Lauren Southern? No. Ann Coulter. That was what Ann Coulter actually wanted the Trump agenda to be, but it never was. They tried to convince the American people that a list like this, which to a lot of us who are semi-conservative or semi-anti-government, tend to see as good things, but don't play with the rest of the country. This is like the opposite problem of trying to run Gavin Newsom from the Democrat Party across the rest of the country. Gavin Newsom's policies play very, very well in California, Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, Virginia, Maryland, most of New England, and New Mexico. They do not play well across the rest of the country. While my biggest problem with DeSantis is the implementation. The fact that he does it by executive order if he can't get the legislative victory for this. A lot of the stuff that he's doing, I actually like. I still think it's, even though he did it by executive order, hilarious that he convinced leftoids to defend a multi-billion-dollar corporation's ability to skirt taxation and not pay their fair share. That was gold. But Ron DeSantis' agenda only plays well in really, really red states. Even if it is going to dramatically improve the lives of everybody. And I do think that it could, even if he, again, does an end run around Congress and goes by executive order, which he will be chastised for on this channel constantly if he wins the presidency and does that. All the deep, deep blue strongholds, and even possibly my state, because they're trying to turn this back into a deep blue shithole, will come back out and turn this into a major, major protest event if he gets in. I mean, you think no! If you think that girl was pissed about Trump, just imagine what happens when we have a unipartyist who is doing everything that he can to actually appease the Evangelo-Cons. Instead of just paying lip service to them like the Donald did. I strongly support his anti-Chinese policies too, but the fact of the matter is that the Walmart crowd can expect to see a major uptick in the price of their goods. And I don't know if they'll get a wage increase to go with it. But the problem with China is the fact that they've gotten us used to paying those bargain basement prices for the Walmart crowd. Whereas if we weren't doing globalism and taking China undercutting their own priorities in order to make sure that we're hooked on cheap, cheap goods, then wages and the price of goods would have been kind of raising in concurrence with each other. in a natural balance with each other. So that is DeSantis, and again, old Benny Boy, he's all in on DeSantis, and I'm sure it appears that Ryan Saavedra is too. I'm not sold, and I will be the first one to come back out and say it. But Governor Executive Order is officially in the race. Let's read one from Axios. Ron DeSantis releases video declaring 2024 candidacy. From Sophia Kai, Aaron Doherty, and Jacob Reyes. Ron DeSantis officially filed the paperwork Wednesday to seek the Republican nomination in the 2024 presidential election. DeSantis, widely seen as former President Trump's most serious challenger, honk honk, made a name for himself challenging the Pinko Pox protocols, pursuing an aggressive conservative agenda on race, gender, and education in the state of Florida after easily winning re-election in 2022. He's expected to formally announce his run Wednesday evening, notably during a Twitter Spaces event with Elon Musk instead of on Fox News, coming after months of speculation about his ambitions. In April, he made a trip overseas to Japan, South Korea, Israel, and the UK to meet with leaders and party officials. DeSantis' wife Casey is expected to play an outsized role as one of his most influential advisors, shaping his image and his story as he seeks the nation's highest office. Here's his image right here, Governor Executive Order. Let's talk about the Twitter space. And then we'll move off of Ron DeSantis, because I've been ripping on him for just about the entire time. Twitter repeatedly crashes as DeSantis tries to make a presidential announcement. From Faiz Siddiqui. This is over at the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. Twitter repeatedly crashed on Wednesday as Florida man Ron DeSantis was set to make his presidential announcement over Twitter Spaces with the site's new owner, Elon Musk. More than 300,000 people tuned into the announcement. The app was struggling to load for some and crashing for others. Well, we've just got a massive number of people online, so the servers are straining somewhat. Yeah, that happened to the old website, Freedom Scoop, by the way, too, just so you know. When Stephen Ignoramus was at the Capitol, and he was outside, he wasn't in the building, he was outside the steps, and I sent him a text, and I asked him if he would shout out Freedom Scoop, and he did. And just that one sentence, while he had 400,000 people watching, he said, go check out freedomscoop.com, and our servers crashed. Instantly. DeSantis' campaign appeared to drop off the call at one point. Before the technical issues, the announcement was expected to serve as a significant coup for Musk and Twitter. As it increasingly courts a right-wing audience, the event comes after high-profile conservatives have embraced Musk's takeover, and personalities such as fired Fox News host Tucker Carlson have said they would bring content exclusively to Twitter. We know what happened with Twitter. Musk acquired the site in October on a promise to restore his vision of free speech. But all he did was cater to the right-wingers, the evil. Musk has repeatedly praised DeSantis, saying last fall that he would support DeSantis in 2024. If DeSantis runs against Biden in 2024, then DeSantis will easily win. He doesn't even need a campaign, Musk said last July. That's also not true. There was something that I wanted to bring up and talk about here. Or is it? Is it here? Where did I put that? Oh yeah, I put it in Clown World. Like, they're already pulling the same tricks that they always did. Coming over here, this is a tweet that I found earlier on today while I was talking about it. Somebody replying to Styx, actually, on this one. Styx says, when DeSantis fan tells you you shouldn't support Trump because he can't win, because the Uniparty will honk him again, just ask them why they wouldn't do the same to DeSantis. Assuming he's the nominee and isn't an AstroTurf Uniparty asset, watch their reaction. which is a fair question. But then Balthorium451, who thinks that he's in a Ray Bradbury novel, says he's already David Duke. He'll be like Hitler next week and worse the week after, with a Vanity Fair headline, screen capped, that says, "Report, Ron DeSantis will formally announce his 2024 bid with Elon Musk because apparently David Duke wasn't available." Yeah, 80s Kid says Elon's all about audience and traffic. Tucker. DeSantis equals traffic equals popularity equals profit. Believe there's a rule of acquisition about that. And it's one of the top ones. Well, the second rule of acquisition, money is everything. And the 10th rule of acquisition, greed is eternal. And the 14th rule of acquisition, the quickest way to find profits is to let them find you. That goes right on to that. Oh, we're going to put Tucker and DeSantis on? Oh, look how many people are going to flock to the site. Alright. Back into what we were talking about here. Musk declined this week to make the presidential endorsement. However, after he was asked about the matter at the Wall Street Journal CEO Summit, I would really just like someone fairly normal and sensible to be the president. That would be great. He said, although he declined to assess the sensibility of the candidates in the race. So, that's where we're at with that. And yes, they already have a slew of things to come back after DeSantis over. Nicole Hannah-Jones and Wiz Political, who is my friend over in Waukesha, a Wisconsin Republican sponge, by the way, accosted me for this after I reminded him of the fact that Nicole Hannah-Jones is already exploring a 2-decade-old rape case, or rape allegation, against DeSantis. If you think that's the only thing that they have out here, and that's what the DeSantis stands like to come back out and say, is that they have nothing on him because he isn't twice divorced and he never did anything wrong in his life, you are full of shit if you believe that. The average human being, and I mean, this is not going into the big ones like they keep trying to pin on the Donald. And they will try to pin on DeSantis, and they tried to pin on Bush. The average human being in this country commits 3 felonies a day without knowing it. The Soviet mantra is, you bring me the men and I find you the crime. Guess what? They're going to do that too. But, well, go ahead, Ron, show us how it's done. I'm kind of interested to see what dirt they dig up on you. That all your stands tell you is not there. Alright, we got to keep going. Partially because I am exhausted. Mr. Scott says, Styx banned you. That's surprising, actually. I don't know if he... No, because he doesn't have mods either. But he just doesn't seem like the person who would ban partially because he says he's a Luddite with technology and doesn't know how. Maybe, I don't know. He also says Tim Pool banned me too, and then he unbanned me. I don't know, I haven't seen a Tim Pool post in a while. I don't know if he's banned me or not. He used to get spammed in my into my feed, even after I unfollowed him. But he hasn't lately. Occasionally I still listen to his videos, but even there I just don't do a lot of that anymore. I don't think Tim Pool is genuine. I think he's Vice. I see what you're saying. Alright, from Town Hall. Not a green check verified source, but it is going to be a tipping off point for us to look at something that is green check verified. New poll revealing Biden's approval rating leaves CNN host stunned, lowest for any American president, from Sarah Arnold. A new poll revealing President Brandon's shocking low approval numbers leaves CNN in disbelief, causing the liberal network to admit the Democrat Party is in trouble. A Washington Post ABC News poll found that Biden is sinking in the polls, sounding the alarms that he may not be able to recover from his disastrous decisions before the 2024 election. In the first real snapshot, if you will, of President Biden's standing since his re-election announcement, voters are saying he has real work to do, CNN host Kate Bolduan said, and that's even among his own party. The poll found that 58% of Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents say they want their party to nominate somebody else. In addition, Biden's approval rating remains at a historic low of 36%. Again, that's an outlier, so we're not going to see that. Let's look at the aggregate. This will actually take us right into Biden job approval, so we'll see that one. And by the way, RCP is green check verified. So Biden is actually sitting, and it's dropped since we last looked at this, at 11.8 points underwater. His RCP average between the dates of May 3rd and May 23rd stand at 42.3% approve and 54.1% disapprove. He has got some very, very good polls recently that are holding that average up, but the 50-50 one that he had just recently appears to have already fallen off. The CNN poll we can pretty much throw out too, which will actually bump him up just a little bit, because that's a 18-point spread, 41-59. But we can't see who is actually voting in this because they won't give us a sample size. They'll just say that it was a bunch of registered voters, but we can't say, is it 2 registered voters? Is it 20 registered voters? Is it 1,000 registered voters? We have no idea. That one can go. That'll actually bring him up a little bit in the polls. Looks like this ABC Washington Post poll they're talking about has not popped up onto the average yet at this point. We are still just sitting with a Monmouth and Quinnipiac as the most recent. But we've got a CBS News, also with a fairly large sample size, but still unreliable because this is just adults that they took on the street. No idea if they're voters, registered or otherwise. It's just, hey, do you like Biden or do you not like Biden? Even though the results skew in the favor of the narrative that I'd like to see, I understand what the sample bias is with that, and same with the Reuters Ipsos and the IBD TIPP polls here that are simply adults. So if we take out the unreliable polls here, we actually do see an aggregate that's better, but not much. Just doing some quick mental math here, I would say that he's 43.8 to 51.7, as it looks like. I'm going to check my math on that, because we've taken a couple really wild spreads out of this one. Regardless, he still stays underwater. And yes, even with those polls that are on there that we said are probably unreliable, it looks like he is moving further apart and going deeper underwater as he goes, according to the chart. I'd be interested to see what happens when this ABC News and Washington Post poll comes in. Alright, let's see. We got blocked from Young Turds chat, a lot of us when he was doing a stick clanking troll. His TYT raids were fun, nice. They did a carpet banning that day, it was hilarious. Mr. Scott says, gas jumped 50 cents here today. It was $2.80 yesterday. Today it's back to $3.30. It is $3.60 in Madison as of today. And $3.59 up here. Alright, let's talk debt ceiling. From Christina Wilkie and Emma Kinnery. Debt ceiling talks make progress, but House will leave town with no deal. Let's see what CNBC has to say. Kevin McCarthy said Wednesday that negotiations over raising the U.S. debt limit were progressing towards a deal, despite disagreements over spending with only 8 days before the government could face an unprecedented default. I wouldn't scare the markets in any shape or form, McCarthy said on Fox Business after negotiations at the White House ended for the day. We will come to an agreement worthy of the American public, and there should be not any fear. He added, Monday's coming into the Treasury every day. But McCarthy's optimism stood in contrast to guidance given to members of the House an hour later, as representatives were informed that they were not to be required to remain in Washington over the weekend to vote on a debt ceiling deal. Instead, Steve Scalise announced on the House floor that the Chamber's week-long Memorial Day recess would begin on Thursday as planned, which means they're not coming back if it's a week-long recess. They're not coming back until the 1st, which is the day that Janet Yellen says, "Oh, we are out of money that day." Kind of interested to see how that's going to work. If some new agreement is reached between President Brandon and Speaker McCarthy, members will receive 24 hours notice in the event that we need to return to D.C. for additional votes, either over the weekend or next week, said Scalise. The decision to let members fly home for the week is a tacit acknowledgement by House leadership the deal to raise the debt ceiling does not appear to be imminent. The parties face a June 1st deadline, at which point the country will be unlikely to be able to pay its bills, according to Janet Yellen. Yes, let's put more bills on the credit card. That always works in a household, doesn't it? Yellen said on Wednesday she was already seeing some stress in financial markets, driven by fears the U.S. could stumble into a first-ever debt default. Debt ceiling-related stress was affecting treasury markets in particular. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. 6% on 1 and 2 year. I've never seen it that high, even under the Great Recession. These signs of stress should be a reminder of their importance of reaching a timely agreement. Republican negotiators traveled up Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House on Wednesday, where they talked for more than 5 hours. As the U.S. inched closer to a default and possible economic chaos, McCarthy blamed Democrats for the holdup. And the off-ramp here is to solve the problem to spend less that we spent last year, he said during a news conference at the Capitol. The California Republican repeatedly touted a partisan spending bill that the GOP passed in April with no votes from Democrats as the only option to raise the debt ceiling. Don't blame us Republicans when we put a reasonable bill together, he said. Well, and again, there's the point of the matter that there shouldn't be any blame for Republicans at this point. They were on. I don't have a lot of love for the GOP, but I will remind you that they were on this, ready to go. And yelling about, hey, we need to do something about this in January when we hit the debt ceiling. And Biden kept saying, hey, no, man. No, let's talk about Ukraine instead, man. Hey, let's go send some more money over there. Oh, look, there's racism going on here. Hey, look, they're going to indict Donald Trump, man. Come on. But the effort to get this started happened all the way back in January. It is now the final week of May. And in the final week of May, with the X date approaching in 7 days, by the way, with all of that being said, now we sit here, we look at this, and we say, why couldn't we do this 4 months ago? A little brief one here from the Hill. GOP says House lawmakers can leave for Memorial Day despite debt ceiling talks. From Michael Schnell. Steve Scalise informed lawmakers on Wednesday they can leave Washington as scheduled on Thursday for the Memorial Day weekend, but that they should be prepared to return to the Capitol to vote on legislation to raise the debt limit within 24 hours. This House is scheduled to adjourn on Thursday and is not slated to return until June 5th, 4 days after the deadline set by the Treasury Secretary for a possible default. Yeah, well, I don't see anybody explaining to me how that can work, but let's see. Mogwai says, F the horse, keep loading the cart. Mr. Scott says, I'm still on the fence with McCarthy. He seems to be holding out longer than I thought he would, to be fair. Well, and that was the point, by the way, of going through and Biden waiting to negotiate until the very, very end to try to get everybody back out to a point where the only option was, okay, well, just pass the debt ceiling the way that Biden wants it, because otherwise we have the captive media who will come back out and tell the American people how evil you are for letting us get to this point. And I know this because it's the same strategy that Democrats have been using for my entire life to try to get what they want. Hold it out to the last minute and make a scandal and a panic out of it. But they're going on vacation until after the debt ceiling hits, so I don't know what's going to happen there. NPR bringing us some fear to go with what the debt ceiling is, because even though the debt ceiling is actually likely to unaffect you, NPR needs you to be afraid that it's going to affect you, so you stop listening to Kevin McCarthy and Republicans and start listening to Democrats the way that NPR does. But remember, they cannot tell you that the only people you should be listening to are Democrats unless you hit that donate button, because NPR is only 10% government funded. So hit that donate button. Give them all of our money, comrade. It's not your money, it's our money, comrade. So they can tell you what it is to think, how to feel, and who to hate. NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. Let's see what Scott Horsley has to say. Veterans, seniors, and government employees. These are just some of the people who stand to be impacted if Congress fails to raise the debt ceiling. Seniors? I mean, I hate to tell you this, but Democrats and Republicans are going to be holding you hostage until you die. That's just a fact of life. They've been doing it since 1984, and they've probably been doing it for a lot longer than that. But they've been doing it for my entire life. That's never going to change. Veterans, of course, the other big main pawn that they pull out every time Democrats don't get their way, and government employees, which we've been going through this since 2011 consistently. If you don't know you stand a chance to not be paid by the federal government and you still want to work for the federal government, and I know somebody, Shannon, Primo's wife from the R-rated conservative, who went to work for the government. I know that people go out and do that and they make a tremendous amount of money for it, but you have to go into this understanding the fact that every time there's a government shutdown, you might miss a paycheck. Because it's been happening consistently since 2011. Treasury Secretary Yellen warns that without additional borrowing authority, the U.S. could run short of cash to pay its bills as early as June 1st. A default would send shockwaves through the global economy and financial markets, mostly because outlets like NPR have been telling you to be very, very afraid of this from the moment that we first heard about this in January. It's not going to actually send a lot of shockwaves through there, but there are a lot of people who are going to sell because they were told that they'll lose everything if they stay in the markets. One of the first big bills coming due on June 1st is $12 billion in veterans benefits. If there's not enough money on hand to pay those benefits, people who've already sacrificed a lot for their country will be forced to sacrifice even more. These are people on very, very low, sometimes fixed incomes that rely on these payments as a lifeline to pay for housing, to pay for food, to pay for expenses for children and for other family members, says Cole Lyle, a Marine Corps veteran and executive director of the Veterans Advocacy Group. Mission roll call, so it could be potentially very crippling. Well, that's a result of people like Biden and like Bush putting another war on the credit card. I have a lot of sympathy for the people who got promised a very, very quick and easy paycheck by going in and carrying a rifle in Afghanistan for a while, but realistically, I was standing back and protesting against that in the early 2000s for a reason. Retirees, the government scheduled to pay $25 billion in Social Security benefits on June 2nd. Again, this is not something you should be paying on the credit card. Here's the other problem I have with this, by the way. I'm told this is not the government money going to Social Security. It's our money. We worked for it for the rest of our lives. Why are we borrowing to do it? If this is your money that's being held in a big government bank account, why can't we make that bill? This whole thing, the fact that this is in the NPR article, completely destroys the left-wing narrative about what Social Security is. If this was really our money I've been paying into for my entire life, then it would be right there as soon as that payment was due. Because it's your money you paid in. But instead, this points out the fact that the government really is robbing Peter to pay Paul. Would-be home buyers. That's me, by the way. The real estate website Zillow estimates the prolonged government default could send mortgage rates soaring as high as 8.4% from about 6.4% today. That would put homes out of the reach for hundreds of thousands of would-be borrowers. But guess what that's going to do to home prices, by the way? This scenario would likely be a 1-2 punch hitting home buyers who are already reeling from the affordability challenges this year in the market, says Jeff Tucker, a senior economist at Zillow. That would discourage a lot of sales. Well, so do the high prices, just so you know. And the fact that most of us have been inflated out of the market for wages. And everyone else. Other payments would be in jeopardy if the government's borrowing limit is not increased soon, including $47 billion for Medicare providers, due on June 1st, $1 billion in tax refunds set to go out on June 7th. Again, that's money that we supposedly paid in. And the money coming back to us is an overpayment for that, so I'm having trouble processing why you have to borrow money for that one. And $4 billion in federal salaries payable on June 9th. Again, a reminder that if you went to work for the government, something that I would never do, I don't begrudge you because it's a really, really good paying job, but since 2011, you had to know that something like this was going to come. 2011 should have been the biggest indicator to get out of your federal government job. Yes, I understand you have a great pension coming for you. Is it worth missing 2 house payments? But yeah, definitely 2 of these. If the narrative is what they tell us the narrative is, then we shouldn't have any issue with at least 2 of these. From the Hill. McCarthy has little room to talk and maneuver in debt ceiling talks. From Alexander Bolton. Really? Then why is he winning? Kevin McCarthy, who was narrowly elected Speaker in January after 15 ballots, is coming under heavy pressure from conservatives not to agree to any debt ceiling deal that falls well short of the House-passed legislation that cut $4.8 trillion from the deficit. So far, President Biden's proposal to cap discretionary spending has fallen flat with McCarthy, who wants the White House to cut discretionary spending on domestic programs without cutting defense. I think we can take some out of defense. And hey, if we take a little bit out of defense, we don't have to worry about sending that money over to the Ukraine. McCarthy tried to sound optimistic about reaching a deal after meeting with Biden on the White House late Monday afternoon, telling reporters it was a productive session. I believe we can still get there, he insisted, despite a gulf on differences between the two sides on spending and policy priorities. House Freedom Caucus members such as Ralph Norman warned that they won't accept anything less than the House-passed bill. They will, by the way. Spoiler alert, they will. That leaves McCarthy with strikingly little room to maneuver. The bill would cut discretionary spending to fiscal 2022 levels and then caps domestic discretionary spending to 1% growth. Over the next decade, it also expands work requirements for federal social aid programs and rescinds $30 billion in unspent COVID funding. House Republicans are also pushing for energy permitting reform, measures to secure the U.S.-Mexico border, and to block Biden's plan to forgive $400 billion in student debt relief, which, by the way, would be the first place I would start making cuts from. Even before we got the wall, because, hey, that's new spending. Biden is holding fast in many of the Republicans' demands, which Democrats warned would hurt American families across the nation, by cutting an array of federal programs, expecting McCarthy to back down. The president's also insisting wealthy companies and individuals contribute to pay more in taxes as part of the deficit reduction deal. So Biden's willing and ready to kill jobs in order to get where he needs to be. McCarthy has more room to wiggle than you think. It's actually Biden that doesn't have any room to wiggle, because all the people who are, quote, supporting him, who claim that they won't vote for him unless he goes draconian against Republicans, well, they're not going to go back and vote for anybody else. But he's still going to face public ridicule if he bends and breaks and gives in to Republicans, even coming down to the fact that the Progressive Caucus is already buying the bricks to arm up Antifa to go make his presidency look bad. So, that's where they're at. From CNN. This. I can't believe I'm reading this. CNN, Democrat, talking point rag. We care about the little people. We care about the retirees. As long as they're only getting Social Security, not anything else. We care about the working class. Why we may need a stock market plunge to solve the debt ceiling crisis. Why we need to cut wages from our seniors who are living on a 401k to solve the debt ceiling crisis. Might as well be what Matt Egan is saying here, you simple-minded prick. I haven't even read this article and I understand what's going on here. From New York, Wall Street is taking a no-worries attitude about the ticking time bomb in Washington that threatens to blow up the world economy. That might be a problem. No, that might be fear porn. Debt ceiling-inspired sell-offs have become almost non-existent. Now, mind you, I put this on the stack on Monday, so we've had 2 days of debt ceiling sell-offs since then. The NASDAQ is still up by a staggering 22% on the year, not for long. And CNN's Fear Greed Index of market sentiment is nearing extreme greed mode. I don't buy your index either, by the way. Perhaps this indifference is because investors have seen the drama before. They know how it ends, with politicians waiting until the last minute before giving in and finally raising the debt ceiling before disaster strikes, which is, again, why we didn't have this conversation in February. No one wants to see the markets panic. apparently you do, needlessly shrinking the 401k plans, nest eggs, and college savings plans of millions of Americans. Unfortunately, there's a growing sense that a bit of market mayhem might be necessary. A sell-off in stock and bond markets may be what's required to get donors and voters to pound on lawmakers' doors. To stop the drama and increase the limit, Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's, told CNN on Monday. So they want the crash to happen before the debt ceiling hits, so that all the bankers come out to the Democrats and say, get to the table. Because it's probably taboo for a lot of these bankers to back Republicans at this point. I never thought I'd see the day that being a Republican meant being in the counterculture, but here we are. On Friday, it looked like the White House and Republicans were getting closer to a deal on the debt ceiling before the talks unexpectedly broke down. But even the news of that setback greeted with a collective shrug on Wall Street. Stocks retreated from their highs, but the Dow ended the day with a loss of just 109 points, or 0.3%. That's not exactly going to get people to call their lawmakers. In some ways, the calm mood in markets is acting like a feedback loop. Investors are betting it'll get all taken care of. Lawmakers are in no rush because the markets are not freaking out. Rinse and repeat, except for the fact that, hold on. Part of the flaw coming back with us on Monday is the fact that this is the markets freaking out. Got one on the 14th Amendment that Democrats have been propagandized to believe is going to solve all their problems. From the Daily Wire, White House says 14th Amendment won't fix the current debt problem. From Brandon Dre. The White House on Tuesday said invoking the 14th to prevent the U.S. from defaulting on $31 trillion in debt won't solve the national crisis after nearly a dozen left-wing senators suggested President Biden use such authority. It's not going to deal with the problem that we're currently having at this moment, at this time. Token University hire told reporters we need to focus on is Congress acting. No video of this, by the way. The Biden admin has warned the U.S. could run out of money as soon as June 1st. Biden suggested invoking the 14th Amendment, which he has no idea what it actually means, but he was told it was a good idea by the staffer that's pulling his strings, which states the validity of the public debt of the United States shall not be questioned to raise the debt ceiling during a press conference on Sunday in Japan, except for the fact, and again, that is in absolutely no way what that means. But when he comes back and invokes it and tries to unilaterally raise the debt limit, and the Supreme Court comes back and slaps him in the mouth and says, no, bad dog, when they roll up the newspaper and go, no, bad. Now the news media can come back and blame the evil Republicans for it. And with what happened with the markets and what happened with the debt. And one of the things with this, by the way, it does appear that this is all being set up so that we actually do have the debt ceiling breakdown, because the recession is coming, and it'll be easy and convenient to blame it on Republicans letting the debt ceiling lapse, which is what caused the markets to melt down. I bet you that's what's in history books 30 years from now. Evil Kevin McCarthy destroyed the economy by not talking to Biden about the debt ceiling and giving him what he wanted. But that's what we have for the debt ceiling right now. From CBS News, a little bit of Trump news here. E. Jean Carroll seeks at least $10 million in new damages against Trump after CNN town hall. From Graham Cates. Author E. Jean Carroll is seeking at least $10 million in new damages against former President Trump after saying Comments that he made at a town hall about being found liable for sexual abuse and defamation were also disparaging, and we're going to go through this loop over and over and over again until one of these two people dies. So get used to that one. The trial verdict stemmed from the second lawsuit she filed against Trump. She filed an amended complaint on Monday. In the first defamation suit, originally filed in 2019, which is still pending, Carroll is asking for very substantial damages because of his comments about Carroll during a CNN town hall earlier this month. Now, in a normal court, in a normal situation, and I explained this at the time that this all came down, in a normal legal suit, E. Jean Carroll would have to provably prove in a court that all the MAGA voters, all the independents, all the right-wingers would have been out buying her books in droves if Trump had just said at the town hall, "No, okay, I did it. E. Jean Carroll's a wonderful person, and everybody should go listen to her." That all these people would have been out there buying her books. I don't think that's provable, and this whole thing needs to be appealed to begin with. Carroll made the allegation. The burden of proof is on her and her legal team to show that she would have potentially had X amount more, $10 million worth of more MAGA buyers to her books and her columns and everything else. Had Donald Trump not gone to the White House and said, "I don't know what's going on. I've never seen this woman in my life. I don't know who she is. She's not my type anyway." Because I'm having a hard time with that. But Trump responds from the Daily Wire. Trump responds to newest legal action from E. Jean Carroll. From the Daily Wire News, former President Trump responded on Tuesday to E. Jean Carroll's move this week, asking a federal judge to amend her defamation suit against the former president by asking for an additional $10 million because of comments that he made about her during a CNN town hall. "I don't know E. Jean Carroll. I never met her or touched her, except on Celebrity Line with her African-American husband, who she disgustingly called the ape. I wouldn't want to know or touch her. I never abused her or raped her, or took her to a dressing room 25 years ago in a crowded department store where the doors are locked. She has no idea when or did anything else to her except deny her fake, made-up story that she wrote in a book," Trump posted on social media. "It never happened. It's a total scam, unfair trial." He went on, "The Carroll case is part of the Democrats' playbook to tarnish my name and person, much now like the now fully debunked Russia hoax. The 51 intelligence agents, FBI Twitter files, and so much more. It's being funded and tried by Democrat operatives, although this was denied by them, and when they got caught in the lie, the Clinton-appointed judge would not let us use it in trial. Time will prove him to be a highly partisan and very unfair. Where's the dress that she said that she had?" Mr. Scott says Biden should be more concerned with the 25th Amendment. Nice. I like that. The Trump hand thing, by the way. Somebody pointed out that Ron DeSantis does this in his speeches too. I've seen one video of him doing that. I don't know if he does it on the regular, but I've seen one video of him doing that. Again, the only two people in the world, in the universe, in the galaxy, in our quantum reality that know what happened in that dressing room are that guy, Donald John Trump, and Elizabeth Jean Carroll. The rest of us can only speculate. The jury can only speculate. The judge can only speculate. Nobody will ever know what happened in that dressing room except for Elizabeth Jean Carroll and Donald John Trump. The same thing with Tara Reid and Joe Biden. The same thing with Christine Ballsy and Brett Kavanaugh. But again, being a defamation suit rather, not a trial, Carol still has to show me how she lost this $10 million worth of revenue in book sales by the fact that he said that. And that has failed to come into light yet at this point. Noted propagandist MSDNC from the Maddow blog. Trump's social media attacks on his legal foes keep coming. And his post prove why a Manhattan judge approved and intends to enforce strict guardrails on the former president's use of evidence. After Carol moved to amend her original defamation case, the former president posted to Truth Social the next morning, reiterating the same statements he's been making about her since 2019. But as for much of his statements have been the same, the ground has shifted underneath Trump, even if he doesn't realize it or doesn't care. First of all, Carol does not have the allegation. She has a jury's verdict that found Trump liable for sexually assaulting her in the mid-90s. And then defaming her last year on Truth Social. That needs to be appealed, by the way. Second, while some question whether Carol would want to move ahead with her initial lawsuit, which was on hold due to a lengthy appeals process, her filing last night proved an answer. Heck yeah, I want to pull a politically partisan trial and see if I can get more people to come back out and buy my books. In fact, not only is Carol still seeking damages from a trio of statements Trump made about her in June when her account of the sexual assault was first published, but she is also seeking punitive damages for the statements he made during the CNN town hall just a day after the jury returned its verdict. While the jury returned its verdict, there's no punitive action to be had. The trial was over. The suit was over, not the trial. I keep falling into the Democrats' trap by calling this a trial. This was a civil suit, not a trial. The suit was over. The gag order was gone. He can talk about whatever he wants after the fact. So you have no punitive damages to seek, E. Jean Carroll. Go back and write another book that nobody's going to read, but a lot of progressives are going to buy and put up on their shelf as a pretty picture piece to say, I stand with all women except for the ones who accuse Democrats. And move on with your life. Alright, something that happened over the weekend that was brought up a lot by creators other than me about what happened in DC when I looked at the Truck of Peace and realized that that was a hoax. I was actually planning on talking about this with the Truck of Peace, but then I realized what had actually happened here and I just bumped it back down to the back burner from Gizmodo, though. Huge shipment of explosive chemicals disappears in Mojave. Investigation is underway. Well, I feel bad for the people who are out here looking to try to figure out where this all went and what happened with this ammonium nitrate because, well, patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter. From Nikki Maine. California officials are investigating the disappearance of 30 tons of ammonium nitrate from a rail car crossing at Midwest. Ammonium nitrate, which is used as fertilizer, can also be used to create explosives and was a key component in the homemade bomb used in the 95 attack on the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. The chemical was shipped by train from Cheyenne, Wyoming last month, but when it arrived in the Mojave Desert 2 weeks later, its holding car was empty and the nitrate was gone. Dyno Nobel, the company responsible for shipping the ammonium nitrate, is a leader in commercial explosives and filed a report with the Federal National Response Center in May 10th, and an investigation is currently underway. The Federal Railroad Admin, the California Public Utilities Commission, and Union Pacific and Dyno Nobel are looking into the disappearance, and the rail car is being transported back to Wyoming to undergo a thorough inspection. Why isn't the Federal Railroad Administration, the California Public Utilities, Union Pacific, and Dyno Nobel doing this? Where it's at? It's unclear how or when the chemical disappeared during transit, but Dyno Nobel told KQED News the railcar was sealed when it left the Cheyenne facility, and the seals were still intact when it arrived in Saltdale. The initial assessment is that a leak through the bottom gate on the railcar may have developed in transit. So, I'm going to be completely honest. The fact that it's empty leads me to believe that this was an accident, and along the route that it took from Wyoming to the Mojave, you're probably going to start to see a lot of grass pop up along the rail track. Those people who live along that track are probably going to have to mow 3 or 4 times more often than they already do. Because I'm going to say right off the bat, I think this was just a spill. I think this was just a leak developed in the car. The ammonium nitrate came back out and fell across the ground. Now, if they maybe found out that a few gallons were missing, one of the seals were broken, perhaps, or they knew they filled it up to the top and marked that they filled it up to the top, and then it came out and it was only 85% full, then we'd be starting to talk about explosives. But to steal that much explosive would require a semi. Now, am I still going to be on edge looking for explosives? Yes, for a little while I will be. Because there's always the possibility that somebody got to the bottom gate, tried to pull some back out of there, and when they did try to stop the flow, they couldn't stop it, so they just said the hell with it and ran like hell. But for the most part, I think this was equipment failure. So, don't get too wrapped up in this. Do be alert. But don't end your lifestyle over something like this. Alright, in foreign policy, a second one today from the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. We don't do this very often. I don't like the Washington Post. I don't care for them one little bit, but this is the second time today. Yeah, it's true. Ammonium nitrate is endothermic when you mix it with water, although I'm pretty sure at this point, it's been 3 days at this point in probably the Mojave Desert or wherever else it is that it's warm. It's absorbed enough heat from the surrounding area that it's probably leveled off in temperature. Now, if we had discovered this as soon as it fell and started looking for it, probably, but it's been probably... And again, I don't know when this leaked and left. This story's been sitting on the stack since I found it on Saturday. It is now Wednesday. Reading from the Washington Post, though, bowing to pressure, Biden relents on F-16s to Ukraine. From Karen DeYoung, David L. Stern, and John Hudson. After months of U.S. insistence that Ukraine did not need the F-16s to fight its war with Russia, Washington finally relented to pressure, agreeing not to stop allied nations from sending Kiev the advanced Western fighter jets it has long desired. I almost forgot there's been a Ukrainian incursion too. We'll be talking about that in just a minute. Because they are moving into Russia at this point. Alright, yeah, I got a couple stories on this one, but let's talk about these F-16s first. We might hold those for tomorrow, too, and we might just start with those. Ukraine now hopes to have US-made F-16s flying as early as this fall, following the US agreement to allow third countries to transfer the aircraft, according to an advisor to Kiev's Ministry of Defense. You know what I'm getting out of this? Just that paragraph right there. They're still planning on doing this into October. If we pull all our weight and decisions are made quickly, Yuri Sachs said on Friday, I would estimate that end of September, early October, we could see first F-16s flying into Ukrainian airspace. While the planes will not be available for the Ukrainian counteroffensive, expected to begin within weeks, the speed at which the decisions are being made to supply them at all has been head-spinning. For more than a year, getting F-16s into the skies above Ukraine for use against Russia has been Kiev's holy grail. But the Biden admin, with more than 1,000 of the planes in the U.S. arsenal, and at least that many having been sold to allies and partners around the world, repeatedly said no, the U.S. retains the right to veto other nations transferring the planes to third countries. Suddenly, President Biden has said yes. European allies with F-16s in their arsenal, several of which have indicated they may be willing to supply them, have been given the admin's go-ahead to send the planes as soon as supplies and logistics are coordinated and Ukrainian pilots and mechanics can be trained to use them. The turnaround, according to the US, European, and Ukrainian officials, is the result of steady pressure from allies, Congress, and Ukrainian President Zelensky, who just completed visits to European capitals and is reportedly on his way to meet with G7 leaders in Hiroshima after stopping at the Arab League summit in Saudi Arabia. The move to supply Kiev with advanced fighter jets comes amid concerns Ukraine counteroffensive may not strike the knockout blow many have been hoping for. Well, no, they don't want it to strike the knockout blow. Because if they strike the knockout blow, then the defense contractors don't continue to make money. Despite Ukraine's brave resistance over the winter and spring, many officials in Washington and Western capitals are concerned that the war will continue this year and perhaps beyond. I know it will. I'm fully well aware of this. The war will continue, at the very least, into December of 2024. But my best guess looking at this is that this is going to go probably into 2042. Secretary of State Blinken was a major force within the admin in pushing to allow the allies to transfer the jets, and worked extensively with different countries within NATO to move the policy forward. Blinken played a similar role when NATO was at an impasse over whether to provide modern tanks to Ukraine. At the time, Germany was hesitant to approve the transfer of Leopard 2s, a roadblock that was overcome when Blinken pushed the White House to approve the transfer of M1 Abrams over Pentagon reluctance, making sure that allies on both sides of the Atlantic were making major commitments to the war effort in tandem. This, by the way, is exactly why Trump would not commit to taking a side in this war. Joe Biden and the G7 leaders, by the way, have clearly, very, very clearly in this, taken a side. They don't want a negotiation. They don't even want Ukraine to win. They want this to be held on for 20 or 30 years. People like this need a proxy war. Or a direct war, one of the two. And the weird part of this is we've already seen this in my lifetime. And nobody understands. In fact, Democrats and progressives continue to spit off the same lines that the Bushites spit off. Alright, I'm going to skip the CNN one. We're going to go to this Newsweek one. Why Russia's superior jet will lose against Ukrainian F-16s. From Ellie Cook. This is probably propaganda, by the way. Russia's Su-35 fighter jet may appear superior or equal to US-made jets, but it would ultimately fall down when pitted against any F-16s promised to Kiev and operated by Ukrainian pilots, experts have told Newsweek. Russia's employed its Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jet, which hails as a 4th-gen aircraft with 5th-gen technology in its ongoing war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force said on Monday Russia's Air Force had lost an Su-35 fighter jet that experienced a negative takeoff in the territorial waters of Ukraine in the country's southern Kherson region on Sunday. Russia's defense ministry had not commented on this at the time. The quest for air dominance in Ukraine has come into sharper focus as Ukraine appears to be inch closer to receiving Western-made fighter jets such as F-16s, which Kiev has long requested. The F-16s, which have attracted more attention than other Western-made fighter jets, are the most likely candidates to upgrade Ukraine's Air Force, experts said. There are several iterations of the F-16, and it's not clear which model Ukraine would theoretically receive. Ukraine is currently operating a fleet of Soviet-era jets broadly similar to Russian Air Force. The provision of F-16s to Ukraine would mark not just a major technological shift towards Western aircraft, but also move towards NATO military doctrine. Experts observed there are several obstacles, both political and logistical, to providing the aircraft to Ukraine, but conflict observers are increasingly confident that Ukraine will soon receive a pledge of F-16s. Russian Su-35s are unlikely to end up directly facing off against US-made F-16s in Ukraine, according to former British military officer Frank Ledwidge, but the Su-35s are considered to be among Russia's most advanced 4.5 generation fighters, he told Newsweek, and are specifically designed to shoot down aircraft such as the F-16. On paper, it can be argued the Su-35 has an edge over the sorts of F-16s the Ukrainians are likely to get, but that doesn't tell the whole story, according to David Jordan, co-founder of the Freeman Air and Space Institute. The Su-35's specifications may indicate there's a better aircraft by many measures. But the true picture is actually far more complicated than that. We have Western bias, so our stuff is better than Russia. This is Cold War rhetoric, by the way. The quality of pilots is the key, Jordan added, although no country has yet promised to furnish Ukraine with the F-16s. Several, including the US, have pledged to support the training of Ukrainian pilots on the advanced craft. Yes, nothing bad can come of selling fighter jets to an Eastern Bloc country. We haven't seen much to suggest the Russians began the war with any particular superior skill sets to the Ukrainians. The training given to Ukrainian pilots in the short term will allow them to make use of the F-16s they receive, Ledwidge said, but being able to use them at maximum capacity will take years, he added. How many US pilots are going to be doing this? That's an honest question, by the way. How many US pilots are going to be piloting these things? And the real question is, unless somebody actually gets captured alive, how would they know? That's a legitimate question, by the way. I'm not being a Putin puppet, Putin propagandist. That's a legitimate question. Because we found out, because of the leaks, that we have US troops educating and fighting on the ground in Ukraine. But this is a piece of pure propaganda. Putin man bad, US jets good. And I'm just gonna, I know we're running up on the clock, and I know I wanted to get to bed by this point, but I'm gonna just sort of run these last two, and then we'll do something that restores my faith in humanity, something I'm thankful for, and head out of here for the day. Alright, Russia says F-16 transfer to Ukraine would raise the question of NATO's involvement. Dude, that question's been raised. The transfer of F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine would raise the question of NATO's involvement in the conflict. No, it would definitively prove NATO's involvement in the conflict. There is no infrastructure for operation of F-16 in Ukraine, and needed number of pilots and maintenance personnel is not there either. Anatoly Antonov said in remarks published on the embassy's Telegram messaging channel. What will happen if American fighters take off from NATO airfields controlled by foreign volunteers? Antonov said that any Ukrainian strike on Crimea would be considered a strike on Russia. Technically true. Crimea is an annexed territory. It is important U.S. be fully aware of Russian response. Ukraine has intensified its strikes on Russian-held targets, especially on the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed in 2014. Now, again, that doesn't raise the question, it definitively proves it. We are in this thing until the bitter end, until somebody comes in and says, okay, I don't care who wins or loses. And it might not even have to be the idiot orange man. It might not have to be the orange spending spree, but we'll use his words of the example. It doesn't really matter who wins or loses in this situation. I just want to see people stop dying. That's all. Stop dying. And the last one from CNN. A bit of stupidity at the end of the show here for you. Climate activists dump charcoal in Rome's Trevi Fountain. From Barbie Latsanedou. Climate change activists turned the blue water of the Trevi Fountain in central Rome black with diluted charcoal on Sunday. Around 10 activists from the climate group Ultima Generazione Last Generation entered the 18th century late Baroque fountain holding a banner that said, "Let's not pay for fossil campaigns considering what's happening in Emilia-Romagna," referring to the deadly flooding in northern Italy, which some experts have linked to climate crisis. Yeah, you can pay experts to tell you any story that you want to hear. Our country is dying, the banner stated. All activists were arrested and faced vandalism charges, Rome police said. Luisa Regimenti, a counselor for personnel, urban security, local police, and local authorities in the Lazio region, which includes Rome, condemned the act. In a written statement, she said that it was the umpteenth demonstration of eco-vandals that hit a symbol of Rome universally known in the world. These people, they can't create anything to sell people on their cause. They can only destroy. Robert Gualtieri, the Roman mayor, tweeted, "Enough of these absurd attacks on our artistic heritage. Today the Fontanati Trevi was smeared. Expensive and complex to restore, hoping there's no permanent damage. I invite activists to compete in a confrontational terrain without putting the monuments at risk." Because I think this is all gravity fed too. I don't think this is motorized or anything. They may have updated it over the years, but I don't think it is. I think this is entirely pumped and gravity fed, the way that it was back in the Roman days. Which means that there's going to be a lot of intricate cleaning going through this after they drain the whole thing back out. That's terrible, by the way. Thank you for coming in here into. This is the third time activists have put charcoal into the famous fountains in the Eternal City in May. They dumped charcoal in the Fountain of Four Rivers in Piazza Navona And in April, they targeted the Barcaccia fountain in the base of the Spanish Steps. The group has claimed responsibility in each incident, which is hilarious because charcoal not only itself is a fossil fuel, but it requires fossil fuels to make. So, and it requires fossil fuels to get the coal back out of, well, no, it's not technically coal. It's charred wood is what it is. Yeah, I'm not going to go down that road, Silentcaster. But with that, these people are terrible. And with that, we are done. And the last thing that we do is we try every week on Wednesday to end on a more positive note. It's going to be a little bit hard to do this off the cuff right now because I'm running on 2 hours of sleep. But we have to look because I talk about so much bad news all the time. And there's just so much good to be thankful about. There's so much to really restore your faith in humanity and really allow you to look forward into things. Now, with Ron DeSantis getting in, I am going to be probably a little bit doomer and gloomer to this because I think that he is going to pick up. I don't think he can win, given where the polls are and given the fact that so many people want to see the Donald into the front of it. And really, honestly, there's nobody in the GOP field. Yes, even the Donald I can vote for. I know what he does. I know how he spends. I can't endorse that a third time. I did it once excitedly, once extremely reluctantly. I don't think I can do it a third time. I know what the bill looks like when we have that man as president. No, it's not all the fake scandals that our friends on the left try to pin with him. It's the fact that he spends almost as bad as Biden did. And when they bring him an omnibus, he just signs it. But that's not what I'm thankful for. When we look around, I did some hiking over this past weekend. It's finally warm enough. I've got the ability to do it. I've made some new friends around the area that can kind of help me see what the trails look like and where I can go around here to go back and do that. And I got back into hiking, which just in and of that self, the ability to actually get up and hike in a place that's not flat is incredible. Compared to where I was, like when I lived down by Janesville. All your trails, there were hills here and there, but they were for the most part flat. It was either going into southern Wisconsin or Illinois, but actually coming in, there's one trail out on the edge of town here that, you're going up the side of a bluff, which is a small mountain. And trust me, I am not in shape enough to get up to the entire top of that at this point. But I put in a good effort, and I didn't want to give up. But I got halfway up and it was time. I'm probably going to go back and try to take another shot at it this weekend, but there's that aspect of the nature of things. The one thing that I do want to come back out and say is I'm thankful for you guys and the fact that we're starting to build an audience on this time slot to a point that I'm actually getting reluctant to go back to the other time slot. Now, part of that is the growth of Rumble on a platform that I am not algorithmically demoted on like I am over on YouTube. But a lot of this is a word-to-mouth thing, and I'm even making a little bit of headway into the Twitch side. I actually got a payout from Twitch. I didn't even see it coming. It wasn't the full $100, so I don't know if they've moved to move your payouts down to $50. I'd have to go look at the TOS again, but yeah, I got paid from Twitch. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty awesome, actually. But the fact that you guys are coming in here and starting to gather into the numbers that we were at on the morning show, I'm really, really thankful to start to see that again. It was a little bit tough going here, and honestly, I thought that when we missed the day on Monday, we were going to be starting from square one again. Especially since the next day we had almost no audience that day. But by today, we're back up here into the numbers that we used to see. Now, of course, there's a big news story that goes with that. DeSantis jumping into the race, Tina Turner, and things like that. But we're back, and we're coming back into more of it here. So you guys are putting me in a position where it's easier to go back and buy a house. And, hey, maybe with the debt ceiling crash, maybe it'll get affordable to us somewhere into the fall here. Maybe I can move at a time when it's not ice cold or 1,000 degrees outside with 100% humidity. Who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. There's no Santeria going on here. So I don't know how it's going to go, but regardless, you guys are the best. Thank you for coming in and supporting here. By the way, if you like what you see, I know Mr. Scott has already thrown a donation in on the Rumble side, so thank you for that. The Mogwai subscribed over on the Twitch side, so I'm pretty pumped about that. One of my favorite songs on the Video Game Study Lounge playlist is playing right now. Leaving the Body from Chrono Cross, one of my favorite ones, is on there. It's just, all in all, it's a great time. It's a great time to be alive, and I'm very, very happy about it. So, this may be the lack of sleep of talking, but I do love you guys very much. Now we're going to head out of here before I gush too much further. So let's throw some outro music up and let's head out. Alright, so thank you everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat, and came by even the lurkers on all the platforms. We'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And watch for the audio platforms, which will get some links up onto all the platforms as well, because I did remember to hit the record button today, so we do have a potential new podcast in the audio format coming out here. So if you can't catch us live, you can go back and catch us over there. But come back and join us here, 6 p.m. Central Time tomorrow for more news, more headlines, more contemporary. We'll see what the backlash is for Florida Man. We'll see what the poll numbers look like. We'll see if we get some new polls coming in now that he's in. And see what we do on the last day of the debt ceiling talks before everyone goes home until the 5th of June. So come back. It's going to be a great time, and we will see what happens in the next 22 hours. What's happening over on the Twitch side? Who we're going to go raid over there today? Go find out quick before we head off here. Who's playing what tonight? Tears of the Kingdom. We're not doing Tears of the Kingdom because I know a lot of you guys are wanting to play that right now. And actually, let's go with Skittles, who's playing Twilight Princess. I think we'll do that because I like Twilight Princess too. Otherwise, the only people who are playing Fallout right now are just a massive 400 viewer channel here. But yeah, we'll go see Jay Skittles playing Twilight Princess instead of Tears of the Kingdom, so we don't get any spoilers for that. And we will see you here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.